I become stronger every year, what's the use of working hard? I become stronger every year, only fools go out on adventures. Good work is the way. Luo Feng, don't call me senior brother. I wasn't as talented as you at first. Master, don't drive me away. It's too exciting outside and not suitable for me, Zhang Yang. The above are all my childhood fantasies. I only learned what reality is when I grew up. Keywords of the novel. Swallowing the Starry Sky. I am getting stronger every year without pop-ups. Swallowing the Starry Sky. I am getting stronger every year. Download the full text of the text. Swallowing the Starry Sky. I am getting stronger every year. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Choosing from Birth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Choosing from Birth. A 100-meter tall building, tightly intertwined with each other, with a slightly gray outer layer that looks somewhat outdated. This type of house does not consider the occupants at all, the distance between buildings is too short, and the sunlight is not sufficient. The floor is the same height, and the privacy is not very good. As long as it is not nearsighted, I believe you can clearly see the opposite side. So each ventilation window in the house is adorned with curtains of different colors and patterns, some of which are still crooked, and what's even more strange is that even if the two adjacent windows have different styles of curtains. Although there is a trash can downstairs, it is full and there is still a pile around, as if there is no cleaning worker. The ground was stained black, and the air emitted a foul odor. But at the entrance of the corridor, there were still two elderly men with white hair playing chess, as if they had not smelled anything at all. At this moment, a white-haired old man sitting near the entrance of the unit with one ear missing lifted his head and his face lit up with a natural smile. He said happily, "Xiao Yang, why did you come back so early today? Didn't you go to the martial arts school after school?" On the other side, walking towards this side was a young man with a slightly silent expression and a strong physique, who was over 180 centimeters tall. After hearing the old man's greeting, he smiled slightly and said, "Today is my birthday. My mother asked me to go home early and said she wants to prepare some delicious food for me." Another one-eyed old man kindly reminded, "Xiao Yang, you shouldn't have said your birthday, but I came down early today and happened to see Xiao Lei. However, his face is not very good, so you should be mentally prepared." The robust young man named Xiao Yang's face darkened and he said, "Thank you, Grandpa, I'll go back right away." After speaking, the young man transformed into a dark shadow and rushed into the unit door. His name is Zhang Yang, and the little Lei we just talked about is Zhang Lei, who is Zhang Yang's brother. After Zhang Yang entered the unit door, he galloped up the stairs, his body agile like a black panther. Looking at the flashing house number, Zhang Yang has become accustomed to it, as if accustomed to the stench downstairs before. He was a bit worried at the moment because he didn't know what was happening at home, but he prayed in his heart not to let the safety of his parents go wrong. At the same time, he thought to himself that waiting, everything would change. We will stay away from this dilapidated and disorderly tube building, and our family's lives will no longer be in danger in the future. Why Zhang Yang is so confident is because he has a secret. He is a traveler. He was originally an ordinary salesperson on Blue Star, earning a monthly salary of over 5,000 yuan. Apart from a mortgage, he still had over 2,500 yuan left in his daily life, and he was able to make ends meet. But he didn't expect that when he went swimming in the reservoir with his friends, his foot cramped. He had done stretching exercises before, and it was summer, so he didn't just get into the water. He struggled frantically underwater, with no sound in his ears. He lowered his head to see the golden sand and stones, and looked up to see a round of orange fireballs. When he woke up again, he was in a hazy state, and he was very weak and had poor perception. It took him some time to realize that he had become a fetus. Now, he is about to turn 18. He was very lucky, and when he was born, he welcomed his golden finger. The system. The system is very simple. Every year, it can increase its strength or talent by 10%, but this is a fixed value. Every time it breaks through a large realm, the foundation of this 10% will be refreshed. Strength and talent are two major options, followed by smaller options. Talent is divided into essence, qi, and spirit. When choosing, you can choose a more focused direction, steadily increasing by 10%, while the other two attributes are slightly fewer. He glanced at another option, which was strength. He decisively chose talent. Joke, what's the use of a newborn child's strength? Do you eat faster during meals? He was interrupted by the outside world when he didn't have a chance to see the options for his strength. Pop. With a very crisp sound, Zhang Yang felt a sharp pain in his little buttocks. Zhang Yang tried hard to open his eyes, but he was unsuccessful. At this moment, he felt a bit regretful. Why didn't he choose strength just now, so that he could see which nurse was so ruthless? I am still a baby, isn't it just thinking about problems, as for directly spanking? Fortunately, when the nurse heard his loud crying, she analyzed based on her experience of delivery that this was a healthy baby, and Zhang Yang was spared the fate of being beaten again. Congratulations, Ms. Wang, you are a healthy kid. Zhang Yang understood a bit at that time. After all, he was a hard-working child, and prenatal education was still very useful. Immediately after, Zhang Yang felt a wave of shaking, and then his face was lightly touched. It should be his mother kissing him. After being encouraged by his mother's love, Zhang Yang didn't cry while taking a shower now. 18 years have passed since that day, and he has also chosen twice. The reason it was twice was because in the second year, he knew what kind of world he came into. During the Great Nirvana period, words such as tube towers, warriors, extreme martial arts schools, etc. all indicate that this is a world that devours the starry sky. He is quite familiar with Devouring the Starry Sky. After all, when he was in school, this book was very popular. I am also very familiar with future development, but I cannot specify which year. But according to the fact that the Golden Horn Giant has not yet appeared, it can be roughly understood that the protagonist of this world has not yet begun to rise. During this period, there have been no disasters or difficulties, which should be considered as a relatively secure life. After all, there are no warriors in his family. After understanding his approximate timeline, he decisively changed his annual choices from focusing on physical improvement to focusing on spiritual improvement, and set default choices. Before leaving Earth, although it was mainly based on power, Luo Feng improved too quickly. After losing the Golden Horn Giant, he directly entered the universe and quickly entered the Virtual Universe Company. Time was really short. If he doesn't choose the right direction, he may miss out on this round of genius battles across the universe. If you want to achieve good results in the game of genius, you must understand the rules. Without rules, you may not even be able to pass the qualifiers. To understand the rules, you must choose to focus on improving your spiritual qualifications. His choice was undoubtedly the right one. As he grew older, a colorful ball in his mind also grew larger, which was the result of his hidden spiritual power being too massive and condensed. At the same time, he also found that his previous talent as a spiritual guru was not very good. Now he has chosen 17 spiritual, divine, improvements, which is 2.7 times his previous talent, focusing on spiritual power. Jing and Qi can only be increased to about 2.5 times their natural talent, which is just similar to Luo Feng's innate talent. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Bribery. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Bribery. Zhang Yang quickly rushed up to the 31st floor without taking a breath of air. At this point, he also stopped his thoughts. This is his home. He thought that rebirth with memories from the past would create a barrier for his family in this lifetime, but he soon realized he was wrong. He also needs to eat well. When he first saw his mother Wang Feng feeding him, the strong maternal love in his eyes that couldn't be dissolved almost made him cry. The palpitations of his soul and the connection of his bloodline made him feel very warm, as if he had returned to his mother's belly. Click. Squeak. Zhang Yang hurriedly pushed open the door, and then saw his father Zhang Zhi sitting on the tattered sofa, drinking with a worried expression. Drinking alcohol. This made his eyes shrink. He knew it was his birthday today and his mother would make an exception by asking his father to drink a little, but now that he's drinking, it's making him nervous. Dad, where's Mom? Your mother hasn't come back yet from buying groceries. Zhang Yang couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief in his heart. If Mom is okay, then their family will live together. It's not dangerous, it's great. He said with a relaxed tone, I heard my brother was in a bad mood when he came back. Zhang Zhi said with a displeased expression, it's not Li Huan's parents who caused it. Her younger brother has good talent, and her parents want to raise money to buy him some resources. Nowadays, no one's family is short of money. Resources and other things are not something that our families can afford. It's not like our daughter getting married and getting a dowry. After speaking, Zhang Zhi pouted into the bedroom and said, your brother came back and had a good temper in the bedroom. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yang's heart relaxed. He thought it was a conflict of emotions, and that he was about to get married. If there were any problems with his relationship, it would be so frustrating. Li Huan's family knows about the adjacent tube-shaped building. He has also heard of her younger brother, whose name is Li Fei, and his talent is indeed good. He is 1 year younger than him and became an intermediate student a few months later than him, but he is also a little genius. Dad, don't worry, I'll go persuade my brother and make sure he comes out happy later. Upon hearing this, Zhang Zhi's face softened slightly and he nodded at Zhang Yang. He is quite confident about his youngest son, who has been sensible since childhood. Although his academic performance is not outstanding, he has a good talent in martial arts and works hard in cultivation. Perhaps in the future, their family will produce a warrior, and their family will become prosperous. The warrior class is a privileged one. Because there was only one bedroom in the room besides the living room, Zhang Yang walked to the bedroom door in just a few steps. Click. Opening the door, Zhang Yang saw that the already small room was now in a mess. Zhang Lei's carpenter tools were scattered all over the ground, chairs were folded in the corner, and his bed was empty on the bottom bunk. A pair of underwear is still lying under his feet. Brother, are you okay? Zhang Yang walked in and looked at Zhang Lei, who was sitting on the ground with a decadent face. While tidying up the room, he asked Zhang Lei with concern. Zhang Lei saw his younger brother come in and a smile appeared on his lips. His younger brother is very kind to him, with excellent talent and hard work in cultivation. Originally, his mother wanted to regularly repair his body, but he refused. The money he saved allowed him to take his wife. I also discussed with my family about not wanting to study in college and wanting to become a martial artist, but my parents didn't agree. Otherwise, I could barely get through this hurdle by borrowing some more money, but the days ahead will be tough. It's not like Li Huan's mother. The dowry of 50,000 yuan was already quite a lot, but now it's 200,000 yuan. Thanks to what she said, my monthly salary is only 2,700, and it takes 6 years for me to eat or drink. I gave her everything. How can we still live together? Zhang Yang folded the blanket and asked calmly, what attitude is Sister Huan? Zhang Lei's face turned a bit awkward, and he whispered, she's pregnant. We're afraid of a bad reputation, so we didn't dare to speak out, otherwise we wouldn't know how her mother is causing trouble. But she quietly told me that if it didn't work out, we would hide for now and come back in 2 years when we got rich. Marriage is a small matter. Zhang Zhi looked at his brother in surprise. Unexpectedly, they had all developed to this extent. Now, this culture is not very favorable here, and there are very few hotels, which are very expensive. Now he understands why his brother, who has always been a bit reckless, has become so decadent. If there is no reason, he can't control his temper at Li Huan's house and start a big fight. It turned out that he was about to become a father, but his wife couldn't marry him, her reputation was not good, and she couldn't give her child a stable home. Brother, do you know what my strength is now? A hint of envy flashed in Zhang Lei's eyes, and he continued angrily, your brother is so worried that he's about to lose his hair. Stop stimulating me and let me be quiet for a while. Within 2 seconds, he curiously asked, how much power has it reached? Zhang Yang's eyes were full of smiles. This older brother was a bit reckless and easy to show off. As his younger brother, he couldn't directly talk about him, so he always splashed 2 buckets of water when he was proud, making him clear and alert. Now I think I'm still stimulating him, my foolish brother, I thought you didn't want to know if you wanted me to leave. Zhang Lei's mind shifted and his face improved a lot. Although he was very curious, he pretended to be impatient and said, if you don't talk, go out and don't bother me. Zhang Yang casually said, my strength is almost 900 kilograms now, and I will soon reach the standard of a quasi-warrior. Brother, do you have any objections to me or to the personality of Sister Huan? Zhang Lei stood up from the ground with one bone, at least 185 meters tall, much stronger than Zhang Yang, but who would have thought that he was actually doing artistic work? He said incredulously at this moment, what? How did you improve your strength so quickly? Didn't you just become a senior student last year? Zhang Yang said with a calm expression, that's because I negotiated with my teacher and only stayed in school for 1 day a week, and the rest of the time was spent practicing in the martial arts school without telling my family. If it weren't for our parents blocking me from dropping out of school and my fear of breaking my leg, I would have been a quasi-warrior by now. Zhang Lei raised his fingers and looked at Zhang Yang, his eyes full of disbelief. Who would have thought that his always well-behaved younger brother could do such a thing? He always thought that his younger brother was too timid and didn't have the same personality as him. He dared to secretly skip class and even agreed with the teacher. Why didn't he believe the teacher was so easy to talk to? How dare you play so wild, kid? Aren't you afraid your parents will find out about mixed doubles? A hint of fear appeared in his eyes as he finished speaking. Brother, it's you who has been beaten at home all along. My parents have never beaten me since I was young, he said expressionlessly. Click. Zhang Lei's eyes are like copper bells. He felt like his heart was shattered. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Future Plans. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Future Plans. Zhang Yang lifted the last chair and looked at Zhang Lei with a serious expression. Brother, I'm about to become a quasi-warrior, and your situation should be relatively easy to solve. I think it's better for you to explain it clearly to your parents. I believe Huanjie is definitely not a problem, but you know your parents' temper. Zhang Lei's cold and timid expression made him say, otherwise, when you become a quasi-warrior, I'll marry your sister Huanjie before telling my parents. The exam is coming in a few more days, and the probationary assessment is in the middle of the month, Zhang Yang said expressionlessly. At that time, I will know exactly what my talent is. If your talent is not good, you may not be able to join the extreme martial arts school until after the actual combat assessment on August 1st. That means I will become a quasi-warrior at the latest in more than 10 days, but I will receive the money on August 1st, so you will definitely get married even later. I still have some confidence in my practical ability. After passing the quasi-warrior assessment, I won't let my parents go to work again. You will face a powerful mother, and I think you should consider it again. After listening, Zhang Lei's body trembled. Zhang Yang thought for a moment and then continued, I don't know how many months Huanjie has been, is she going to be discovered? But I know that if I join the extreme martial arts school, it should allocate me a place to live, and you will have to live with us in the future. Zhang Lei's face was a bit pale, and he covered his chest and quickly said, Brother, hurry up. Stop talking. What are you two brothers whispering inside? Why don't you come out and help me pick vegetables? A gentle middle-aged woman's voice spread from the living room to the bedroom. Zhang Lei trembled and turned his head to the door, quickly responding, Okay, Mom, will go out right away. Then he turned to look at Zhang Yang and said, "Brother, what are you doing with a wooden knife? Dad has an old injury and has been in poor health. He can't use all his strength. Prepare something for him to hold and relieve his qi without harming his body," he said expressionlessly. Zhang Lei's mouth twitched and he said dryly, "Okay." He turned around and walked towards the outside like a warrior rushing to the battlefield. Zhang Yang followed out the door and saw a middle-aged woman with a plump figure and a round face, who looked very kind. That was his mother. He still remembered that his former mother was not as fat as she was, and she was also a slim person. However, when eating mantou and pickles, there was no way out. Zhang Lei timidly walked up to Zhang Zhe and whispered, "Dad, I have something to tell you." Zhang Yang walked behind his father, and Zhang Zhe glanced at him. He paused on the wooden knife in his hand and turned to Zhang Lei seriously, saying, "Look at you like a bear. What's going on? Tell me." "Dad, actually Huan is pregnant." Zhang Lei glanced at his mother with a hint of light in his eyes and whispered as he finished speaking. The room suddenly fell silent, and the sound of washing vegetables on Wang Feng's side disappeared. Zhang Zhe's anger also rose little by little, and his body trembled slightly. Zhang Zhe pointed at Zhang Lei and said in a muffled voice, "His mother, give me a call." Wang Feng walked over in 2 or 3 steps, turned around and hugged Zhang Lei, anxiously asking, "Old man, what's wrong? Isn't it just right to have a child and get married? Anyway, this matter has already been decided." Zhang Zhe sneered and said angrily, "Is this the child's business? The problem is that Li Huan's dowry for her mother costs 200,000 yuan. The child is his mother, you can handle it as you please." After hearing this, Wang Feng's face stiffened and she roared angrily, "Sun Xiujuan's sausage mouth is actually asking for a dowry of 200,000 yuan. It has blackened her heart, and she dares to speak up." With a roar that left me feeling a bit frustrated, I threw the celery on the table. She slowly turned around and her expression gradually faded away. She sternly asked Zhang Lei, "Are you really pregnant?" Zhang Lei lowered his head and whispered, "Really, she didn't come to relatives last month." Wang Feng didn't lose his temper and asked the child if it was his, then confirmed once again, "Does she really dare to ask for a dowry of 200,000 yuan? I heard it was to purchase cultivation resources for Li Fei," Zhang Lei explained in a low voice. Zhang Yang watched as his father stood up and quickly handed over the wooden knife. Zhang Zhe reluctantly smiled at Zhang Yang, then picked up the wooden knife and turned around to join the battlefield. Zhang Yang looked at his brother, who was 6 years older than him, and now his pitiful appearance made him unable to help but raise his eyebrows. He never expected his brother to play so well. If unmarried pregnancy spreads in this tube building these days, he doesn't know what it will become in the end. It was originally a pile of poor people's nests, and there wasn't much new happening here, but there were quite a few gossip women here. Good things don't go out, and bad things can definitely spread for thousands of miles. The most important thing is that he doesn't even have a girlfriend now. In his previous life, he was careless and almost became the receiver. Fortunately, he restrained himself from using knives and guns. As for this life, he is not planning to fall in love in a short period of time. Is his cultivation not good, or is it not satisfying to break through? The most important reason is that the current human intelligence on Earth is too poor. If we were to part ways in life or death, it would be too painful. After a meal of stir-fried meat over ice and fire, the family sat down at the dining table with Hame. Although it was a simple folding table, thanks to the craftsmanship of the person who had just been beaten, it looked quite exquisite. Zhang Zhe took a sip of sorghum wine and said in a slightly low voice, Yang, I know about your school. You have had your own opinions since childhood, and the college entrance examination is coming soon. I don't know how you thought about it. Zhang Yang was initially surprised, but then it became clear that the teacher had quietly informed his father after the school incident was exposed. Although my dad knows, he didn't pay much attention because he believed in himself. Maybe he went to inquire about his usual situation in the martial arts school. Dad, my current strength is about to become a quasi-warrior. I plan to go for the assessment on June 15th. Luo Feng, who had originally lowered her head and perked her ears attentively, her eyes lit up and she lifted her head directly. Zhang Ya's face also showed a smile, gesturing to Zhang Yang to continue speaking. Zhang Yang no longer concealed himself and simply spoke up, Mom and Dad, this is the era of martial artists. I became a senior student near the age of 17, and I believe I have the talent to become a martial artist. I believe that everything needs to be focused in order to do well, so I often skip classes and go to martial arts schools for exercise. As for the knowledge in school, it cannot be said that it is useless, but some of it is not suitable for me. I want to join the extreme martial arts school after the probationary martial arts assessment. Although the treatment there is poor, after all, I am free and can control my own safety. There won't be any chaotic tasks, and I can also practice seriously. Afterwards, I will practice for a period of time before going to the wilderness area for experience, which will enhance my self-protection ability and also benefit my cultivation. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Love Always Silently. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Love Always Silently. After hearing Zhang Yang's words, Zhang Ya fell silent for a while, and with a hint of inexplicable desolation in his joy, he said, You always make big moves quietly, and even if you become a quasi-warrior, you shouldn't say such a big thing earlier. The same goes for skipping classes before. If it weren't for the school teacher's responsibility to call and notify us, we wouldn't know how long it would take to find out. You have been obedient since childhood and very sensible. We also believe that you know what you are doing. After you became a senior student, I didn't bother you anymore. If you want to become a martial artist, although your family can't help you much, it won't become a burden for you. Now you are also about to become a quasi-warrior, and your family can't even give you some advice. I hope you can remain cautious, as wilderness areas are not as safe as Base City. After speaking, Zhang Ya's eyes showed a look of memories. During the Great Escape, even the warriors were not very safe. On the way to escape, they even died faster than ordinary people. Zhang Yang's heart is very warm. Although he naturally won't cause any trouble because of his travels, his parents have never been less concerned about him. Perhaps at times when he was unaware, his parents were quietly watching him, perhaps this was family affection. Dad, don't worry, I won't go to the wilderness area when I'm not sure. In fact, it's not as dangerous as I imagined. As long as I don't go to those dangerous cities and slowly penetrate the city, monsters will be hunted by warriors. Zhang Ya nodded. His flamboyant personality was not like that of Zhang Lei. He was very steady in his work and had a calm personality. He was still very confident about his youngest son. Luo Feng saw that they had finished speaking and picked up some dishes with chopsticks and put them into the open plate. She kindly said, Yang, this is your favorite shredded lentils. You should eat more on your birthday today. This one is so fresh. I've been picking it up in the market for a long time. Zhang Yang smiled and said, Thank you, Mom. He picked it up with chopsticks and chewed it in his mouth, taking a mouthful full of the fragrant beans. His expression was very satisfied. Luo Feng looked at her son's expression and her face became even more friendly. She knew exactly what her son liked to eat, and she had also studied cooking well. Her greatest hope was for the family to be happy and joyful. Zhang Lei looked at his own bowl, then at Zhang Yang's bowl. How long has it been since his mother picked up vegetables for him? He remembers that when he was a child, he was the most favored child in his family. With slightly blackened eyes, he said discontentedly, Mom, what about mine? You can't choose celery, green peppers, and other crispy dishes when buying groceries. Luo Feng's good mood has been ruined, and she still has so many demands for guilt. Why hasn't Yang been picky about food? Everything she eats looks delicious. She casually picked up a few bean sprouts and put them in his bowl, saying in a bad mood, "Just eat, you know how to eat. You can't let me save dim sum. I don't know how to buy vegetables. I also dislike the bad taste. I think you will bully your mother if you dare to say this when you are with Huan in the future." Zhang Yang looked at his mother's temper as if she had been ignited, and comforted her with a voice, "Mom, what brother means is that you make the dishes more fragrant. I want you to make more for him, not because you don't like the food you make." Luo Feng felt comfortable listening to her youngest son's words, but she couldn't hold back her anger. Turning to look at Zhang Zhe, who was drinking, there was a hint of flesh pain in his eyes, but more concern. His voice lowered a bit and he complained, "If you have a chest injury, drink less alcohol. What's good to drink? If you drink too much, can you still do your editing job? If you lose this job, I see what else you can do." Zhang Zhe looked solemnly at Zhang Yang, who was silently eating food, and then at Zhang Lei, who was winking at him. He felt that he had hit him a bit lightly today, and his hand holding chopsticks was slightly tighter. Turning his head to his wife, he sneered and said, "Just one drink, I'll just have one. It won't delay the main business. 2 yang of wine is just right." Zhang Yang doesn't need to look up to know that his mother must have given him another white look. Zhang Zhe doesn't usually drink alcohol, it's too expensive, which means having a drink during the Chinese New Year and holidays. In fact, his father is usually very kind, but occasionally his face is very dignified. His brother always provokes him at such times, and he feels that his brother is very brave. At such times, he just needs to eat his food honestly. Late at night. It's already past 11 o'clock now. At that time, Luo Feng went to the hospital after feeling something on the night of June 3rd, and the process went very smoothly. Around 11:45, Zhang Yang was born. Afterwards, Zhang Yang would wait with peace of mind at this time every year. When it was time to make his own choices, he would silently feel his changes. He had a premonition that there might be some different changes today. Time slowly passed by, and at this time in the past, he would recall those happy moments and look forward to the future, but this time he did not choose to do so. Who dot? Zhang Lei was still snoring under the bed, sleeping soundly. His parents outside had already rested, and the night was as quiet as usual. Zhang Yang not only didn't sleep, but also became more nervous than ever before. The solid ball of spiritual energy condensed in his mind now is very large, and he is probably on the edge of awakening. The awakening of a spiritual master has never been so safe, and now he usually feels a slight swelling in his head. He won't be like those students in school who don't understand anything. He dropped out of school and quickly became stronger not because he was eager to become a warrior, but because he wanted to save himself. No one can help him with this level. The sea of spiritual consciousness is always the most mysterious, and it is impossible to detect it under the current medical conditions. Speaking up is just a white matter to worry his family. He woke up from ignorance and knew that upon entering this world, he would face the first threshold of becoming a strong person. He didn't believe he couldn't make it through. Unfortunately, he's almost there. He currently has a punching power of 852 kilograms. If he could go any faster, he could become a warrior. At that time, his physical fitness would greatly improve, and his spiritual awakening would be much safer. Even if the system's options are adjusted to the strength option now, he cannot break through the bottleneck of a warrior without the genetic ability cultivation method, facing the same danger of awakening spiritual power. The talent for slowly improving mental strength has given him time to improve his physical fitness to withstand all of this, and he is already very lucky. Moreover, he also believes that the system's choice is correct, and the talent options are not just about improving one aspect, but rather in a balance he is unaware of. That is to say, the system recognizes that he can successfully awaken, and as for the process, whether it is painful or not, he will face it all directly. Coming into this extraordinary world, he has been influenced by the culture here for 18 years. How could he not even have this enlightenment? He still has his family to protect. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Awakening of Spiritual Minders. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Awakening of Spiritual Minders. Zhang Yang didn't wait long before the system selection interface lit up, and he knew he could make a selection now. He didn't know exactly what would happen to him later, but the awakening of the spiritual mind teacher seemed like a severe headache. In this case, some protection needs to be done. He rolled a small piece of the blanket and tightly stuffed it into his mouth to clamp his upper and lower teeth, but at the same time, there were gaps on both sides to prevent him from dying from hypoxia. As for the rest, let's forget about it. There isn't anything so sturdy at home that can withstand his weight of over 900 kilograms. He lifted his body and looked at the ground under the moonlight, which was only about 1.7 meters high. If he fell, it shouldn't be considered anything to him. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Yang lay flat on the upper bunk, tightly gripping the bedding with both hands, and consciously choosing spiritual talent enhancement. Bang! Zhang Yang, lying in bed, suddenly felt his body tense and straight, but when he looked up, he still made a strange noise. His eyes suddenly widened and blood quickly filled his body, trembling uncontrollably. Pain. The suffocating pain felt as if there were needles drilling through his head and insects crawling. The constantly stimulated nerves are a bit like toothache, but all teeth ache, and the intensity of the pain is even stronger than 100 times. Now he feels like his entire head is filled with nerve lines, and someone is brushing back and forth with a brush, with balls inside his head that are exploding one by one. Ha! He unconsciously sucked in his breath. The pain almost made him faint, indicating that the senior apprentice still has enough control over his body. The will and spirit that naturally grow from his spiritual talent also leave him with a little bit of consciousness to control his actions. If it weren't for his current strength, he would probably have started struggling frantically. The bedding has been slowly torn apart by the hands that move with the spread, and the entire bed is trembling up, down, left, and right. Snoring, Zhang Lei, who was sleeping soundly below, didn't notice anything, and his parents outside probably didn't either. Zhang Yang felt like he couldn't hold on anymore. He had already been prepared, but he didn't expect such pain. He had lost control of his body now. He was just an ordinary person, and so far he has never had such an experience. Fortunately, he survived the initial mild stage without being noticed by his family. Now he wants to howl, but he no longer has the ability to do it. His soul seems to be burning in flames. He struggles frantically inside without any effect. He no longer has the ability to think, only unconscious endurance and resistance. Creak. Creak. Yang, you're not sleeping, what are you doing? The sound of the bed shaking came from the bedroom, and Wang Feng outside was awakened and asked softly. But the Zhang Yang in the bedroom had long lost consciousness, and apart from the still creaking sound, she did not receive any response. Wang Feng had already realized that the situation was not right. She slapped her husband away and flashed her body towards the bedroom. As soon as she turned on the light, she saw the constantly convulsing Zhang Yang. Yang. Am I dead? No, I was conscious, I succeeded. Consciousness slowly recovered, and his body gradually regained consciousness. He opened his eyes with a trembling expression and saw his mother lying next to the hospital bed, which made his eyes a bit dazed. It's over, everything is over, it won't be so dangerous in the future. Mom, our happy and comfortable life is about to begin. Zhang Yang promised in his heart. Although he is lying flat now, he can feel an increase in strength, and his mind seems to be holding a fierce beast, which can cause a devastating blow to his surroundings if he is not careful. Zhang Yang sat up slowly and reached out to gently grasp Wang Feng's hands. He felt a bit cold, probably due to a lack of blood circulation. It seemed that his mother had been here for a long time. Although Wang Feng was very tired, she slept very lightly and her mind was very sensitive. The movement she had just shown off had already made her notice. When she felt the warm and open hands, she suddenly opened her eyes and saw Zhang Yang sitting up. Her eyes were filled with joy and relief, and she held Zhang Yang directly in her arms. Yang Yang, you scared Mom to death. You were unconscious for 2 days. How are you feeling now? Zhang Yang gently patted Wang Feng's back and said softly, Mom, it's okay. I feel very good now. That was a normal phenomenon of spiritual awakening before. You can consider it a talent, that's a good thing. Your son has completely become a genius now. Strictly speaking, I am already a warrior now. Although Wang Feng was pleasantly surprised upon hearing this, she was still more afraid. After all, the publicity at that time was too terrifying, as if she was going to die the next second. She couldn't bear this kind of stimulation. As long as you're okay, I can rest assured if you're okay. Zhang Yang continued to appease, Mom, of course I'm fine. Your son has made a name for himself. I'm now a warrior and still a talented warrior. From now on, you don't have to work anymore. I will soon be able to earn a lot of money to support you, and we will continue to live in beautiful neighborhoods with big houses. You can watch your favorite TV dramas at home every day, and I will find a way to help my dad's health heal. Isn't my brother getting married soon? Sister Huan also has a child, so you can immediately rest at home and see your little grandson and granddaughter with peace of mind. That's great. Wang Feng also entered into the imaginative and flamboyant description, and her emotions calmed down. Yes, my son is a genius. Your father and I know you have been a genius since childhood, and our family will definitely be fine in the future. Zhang Yang saw that his mother's emotions had stabilized and he whispered, Mom, although I have talent, we can't talk to outsiders either. After that, just talk about the physical discomfort caused by excessive cultivation. After hearing this, Wang Feng quickly nodded. She understood the principle of not revealing wealth. Although their family didn't have much money, they had heard of such things before. My son has grown up now, and Mom listens to you. Mom won't talk nonsense, she said. Zhang Yang smiled and said, Mom, let's call home first to reassure both father and brother, and also tell them that they don't have to go to work tomorrow. I'll be discharged tomorrow, and then you should take a good rest. It seems like your eyes are turning a bit dark. Wang Feng touched her eyelids with both hands and exclaimed in surprise, What? Seeking collection, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Shandong Base City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Shandong Base City. The next day. Walking up the stairs, he was carrying a bunch of things and complaining, Mom, I said it's okay. Why don't you believe me? Buying such supplements is so expensive and deceitful. Wang Fengbai glanced at him and said, You stinky kid hasn't eaten for 2 days and hasn't even shouted hungry. Yesterday, you were confused and fell asleep. I didn't even give you the chicken soup I cooked before. Zhang Yang said helplessly, Mom, I'm really not hungry. Besides, how uncomfortable it is to drink such delicious chicken soup in the hospital. I'll drink it all when I go back. Wang Feng thought for a moment, and before she could say anything, when she turned the stairs, she saw that Zhang Zhe and Zhang Lei, father and son, had already come down. Zhang Zhe looked up and down at Zhang Yang, his eyes filled with worry. After seeing that there were indeed no problems, he said with peace of mind, As long as you're okay, your mother will be worried to death these past few days. Zhang Yang smiled and said to his father, Dad, I'm really fine. It's not convenient to talk here. Let's go home and I'll tell you later. After speaking, Zhang Lei glanced at his 2 brothers with symmetrical black eye circles, and his eyes were filled with worry and a hint of resentment. Brother, let Sister Huan come over. We have chicken soup cooked by our mother here. After returning home, there was another round of explanation, and soon after, Li Huan and Zhang Lei returned together. Zhang Yang is already very familiar with Li Huan, after all, she grew up with her own brother when she was young. From his perspective, although not very beautiful, his facial features are upright, with a hint of heroism in them. He is a perfect match for his own burly brother and can also subdue Zhang Lei. But at this moment, entering the door was a different posture. The originally cheerful personality has now become a bit awkward, with hands crossed in front of me, looking quite unfamiliar. Wang Feng looked at it. "Yo, Huan has arrived. Why don't you come in quickly?" After finishing speaking, he got up and went straight to pull her in. He turned his head and angrily scolded Zhang Lei, "Boss, you're just a fool. Huan is shy and you're pretending to be foolish in front of the door." Zhang Yang also stood up with a smile and said, "Sister Huan, you're here. My mom cooked chicken soup, and we're just waiting for you." With admiration and a hint of envy in Li Huan's eyes, Yang, "Did your brother say you became a warrior?" Zhang Yang confidently said, "The strength has been reached. I will participate in the assessment of quasi-warriors on the 15th of this month." A hint of sadness flashed in Li Huan's eyes, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "You are much more talented than Xiao Fei. If he could work as hard as you, he wouldn't have to let his family buy him this and that." Zhang Yang smiled and didn't speak. He and Li Fei are considered the most talented in this community, and they have some reputation in school. However, he doesn't really like Li Fei's personality. Li Fei is a bit arrogant and also a bit resentful. It is said that he has had conflicts with some wealthy children in the school. Zhang Yang is different, he just wants to wait for his strength to reach before thinking about something. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart whether he was still young and full of energy. He didn't know how big the world was, and was blinded by the praise in front of him. After a fall, he became clear-headed. If he has the ability in Li Fei has improved, for the sake of Li Huan's face, he must give a hand. After staying at home for a while, he watched his mother take Li Huan and start chatting about daily life. Zhang Yang then left. He had been suppressing his mental strength and trying to control his physical strength, but he still didn't know how much his strength had improved. He was born in Jiji City, Shandong Province, which was originally located south of the provincial capital Jian of Shandong Province in China. At that time, it was called Quancheng. But after the Great Nirvana, everything changed, and half of the city was destroyed. The name was basically chosen based on the region, so this city was renamed Shandong Base City. Zhang Yang heard his father say that his hometown is in WF, but it has now been captured by monsters. Initially, after a migration of 200 kilometers, they arrived in Liqing district of Quancheng Base City. Here, people settled down, jointly built the base city, and guarded it. A distance of 200 kilometers may sound very close, but in the wilderness, even a 1-kilometer area is filled with countless dangers, let alone the migration of large troops for 200 miles. Death may be at the moment when you are in a daze, unaware of any mutated animals that will take your life. It is because he is in the base city of Shandong that he cannot determine the time, because the Jiangnan base city separated by Luo Feng is too far away. It is not that warriors cannot leave the base city, but also that they can deliver takeout to monsters. Is Senior Zhang Yang here? Xiao Yang. Zhang Yang, senior brother. In the extreme martial arts school, Zhang Yang smiles and faces various greetings. Many people here are actually old faces, and those with poor talent find it difficult to become martial artists within a few years. More often than not, they were expelled from practice at the age of 16 until their 30s. People over 30 years old have little potential and are prohibited from occupying the cultivation resources of martial arts schools. So although some people call him senior brother, the majority are older than him. After all, these people during this period do not go to school, have not been admitted to university, or cannot afford tuition fees. Those who are unwilling will come to the martial arts school to continue their hard work. Perhaps by the age of 20, he became a warrior and realized that low-level warriors were just the beginning. In the wilderness area, he could kill 2 monsters with a machine gun, which was not very valuable and could even lead to losses. Zhang Yang silently approached a punch testing machine, closed his eyes and slowly felt his strength. As he opened his eyes, he quickly circled and stretched his entire body into a bow. His fist fiercely hit the punch target of the punch testing machine. Bang! Drip by drop the punch target shook violently. The punch strength testing machine displays 1,125 kilograms. Seeing this value, a smile appeared on the corners of his open mouth. He had already known that his punching power had greatly improved because he couldn't control his strength well now. He already has a fist power of 850 kg plus, and over 900 kilograms is certain. Unexpectedly, he could reach 1,100 kilograms, which increased his fist power by 20%. No wonder it's difficult to control. Zhang Yang saw no one around him noticing and was working hard to cultivate. He quickly cleared the values on the boxing test machine. Raising to 900 kilograms is already somewhat unbelievable. If there is still so much improvement after 900 kilograms, then the power of the spiritual mind master does not need to be hidden. It's not a good thing to show off all your strength too early. You can only live longer by keeping a hand on others. It's good if you know your own strength. If others know about it, you can't face some unexpected situations. As long as he can cultivate steadily to become a senior warrior, he will no longer be afraid of the sniper rifle of the warrior. When facing the tide of beasts, as long as he cannot fly, he can escape. I picked up a slightly heavy Shadow Series broadsword and started waving it, gradually becoming familiar with my own power. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Instructor Wu Jun. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Instructor Wu Jun. For a moment, the prominent figures in the martial arts school constantly changed, and the sword slashed like lightning, pursuing a speed. When it fell, it had the momentum to cut through mountains and rivers. Sweeping like wind, the knife light becomes very dangerous, and the knife technique appears very sharp. When pressing the knife, one's body is like a mountain, bowing can lift a tripod, and the strength can carry 1,000 pounds. Then, with a thrust of the blade, the killing intent was imminent, followed by a powerful slash I practiced 3 times in a row, and finally slowly finished hiding my sword while gently exhaling a mouthful of turbid chi. With his current strength, using this 60-kilogram shadow broad knife is still very difficult. After only practicing 3 times, he has already sweated a layer of fine sweat on his body. However, there are also gains, and the more difficult it is to control, the more strict the control of power, and the more obvious the subsequent improvement. If he still has chicken soup when he comes home now, he won't have to be careful this time, otherwise he'll pinch the spoon and his mother won't be able to clean him up. He chose the sword technique with some consideration. The moon stick and year blade are lifelong weapons, not only easy to master, but also effective in cultivation. They can quickly enhance his combat power and conceal his spiritual and mental abilities. The sword is powerful, and the broadsword appears even more fierce inside the sword, which is beneficial for him to break free from the constraints of his previous comfortable thinking. This is a bloody world, Earth is like this, the universe is like this, and wars between ethnic groups are even more so. Secondly, the knife moves forward without hesitation, which also benefits his character. Although he has systematic help to steadily improve his own strength, the improvement of his strength also depends on the foundation. A small level in this world requires twice the improvement, and warriors need to improve their physical and genetic abilities. If we just wait, it will take 10 years for the planet level to be upgraded by 1 level. This is still without the need to meet other conditions, and the subsequent combat power cannot be increased by thousands of times. Moreover, in a situation where everything is comfortable in life, he doesn't know how much chain reaction his little butterfly has caused, but he knows that as long as he exists, he will change, and the world will change. The impact on Luo Feng may only differ by 0.1 seconds. But as long as it changes, no one knows if he can still kill the golden horn giant and successfully seize it. I don't know if the arrival of aliens will make the most correct decision, and if there will be any changes when he comprehends the rules in the future. He can't wait. Similarly, he will not always rely on others for hope. He also needs to work hard, and the system only assists him in improving and accelerating his cultivation speed. Pop 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 pop, a burst of enthusiastic applause came from the side. Zhang Yang was a bit engrossed in practicing the knife technique just now, without observing the changes around him. At this moment, he heard applause and turned back abruptly. Instructor. A thin middle-aged man, if you look closely, can see that his right hand has 2 missing fingers. He is the flamboyant coach, named Wu Jun, who was originally a senior warrior. During a trip to the wilderness to hunt monsters, he was bitten off by a cloud python with 2 fingers, but he also stabbed the python 7 inches with a knife. However, due to age and physical reasons, he stopped going to the wilderness and came to the martial arts school to become a coach to cultivate the next generation of warriors. Wu Jun walked over and praised, "Your swordsmanship today is a bit more fierce and sharper than before, and I don't know where you learned this kind of swordsmanship." Of course, Zhang Yang knew that the instructor knew his own details. At this moment, he couldn't help but recall the feeling of life and death the night before yesterday, which was truly a painful experience of death. As for how it would be helpful for his swordsmanship, I didn't expect it before, but now I feel that his swordsmanship has become more fluent. Compared to before, the drowning I had traveled through was like falling asleep while taking a shower, and it was definitely uncomfortable. But more of it is the panic and helplessness in my heart, saying that there is not much pain, and when it is really painful, it is not far from fainting. If you want to know where to learn swordsmanship, it's still a modification of the non-cutting moves in Hokage. After all, chopping off the head is fierce enough, and there are also many scenes of fighting. On the contrary, the movies and TV dramas he has watched are a bit disappointing, with slow movements on both sides and the right hand, such as left green dragon and right white tiger, and 100% empty-handed catching a white blade, which is simply indescribable. To the extent that the current utilization value is very low, the knife technique is something I usually think about myself after watching some short films. When I was young, I saved up money to buy a wooden knife and practiced it at home when I had free time. As for the change, it may be due to excessive exercise in the past 2 days, and later fainting and being taken to the hospital. Wu Jun nodded. After all, he is a genius. It is possible to make some breakthroughs in the near future. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he said, "Are you using the N6 model from the second series? Can you dance like that with less than 900 kilograms of power?" Zhang Yang's remaining light flashed, indicating that his instructor was only surprised and had no doubts about anything else. He felt relieved. He still hasn't been able to hide it. He can't afford not to train in the martial arts school for the next 10 days, he can only expose some. I just tested it and found that my fist strength has reached 1,000 kilograms, which may be related to overtraining a few days ago. Wu Jun's eyes lit up slightly. "Are you ready to participate in this month's quasi-warrior assessment?" Nod your head openly, knowing that the instructor is just for reward and doesn't care, it's not beneficial. Who would keep helping you like this? Wu Jun has always been very concerned about him and has provided him with a lot of help. He had already planned it. "I am planning to participate in this quasi-warrior assessment, and I also want to continue participating in the actual warrior assessment. I will also need the help of the instructor to arrange it." Wu Jun didn't answer directly, pondered for a moment, and said, "There is no problem with the assessment of quasi-warriors. The actual assessment in the future should be based on your performance. On August 1st, a practical assessment will be conducted. If you can absorb the first genetic energy before the assessment, I will help you apply." Zhang Yang nodded, and Wu Jun was very responsible. If he couldn't absorb the first genetic energy, it would be very dangerous to participate in the martial arts combat assessment with a force of 1,000 kilograms alone. If the first genetic energy is successfully absorbed, the average person's strength can increase by about 300 kilograms, the excellent person can increase by more than 600 kilograms, the human elite can increase by more than 1,000 kilograms, and if it can increase by more than 1,500 kilograms, it is undoubtedly a genius. Regardless of the type, it can greatly enhance one's strength, even if there are adverse reactions during combat, it can still save one's life. Okay, thank you, instructor. Wu Jun chuckled and said, alright, let's go see what level your specific values can reach. His flamboyant gaze flickered, but he did not refuse. After a round of testing, the fist strength was 1,017 kilograms, the speed was 28.8 meters per second, and the neural response test was excellent. After watching the flamboyant test, Wu Jun's eyes became even hotter. He was a genius who had just turned 18 years old. With his hard work in teaching, he finally achieved results. At your current level, you can definitely pass the assessment for quasi-martial artists. After obtaining the gene cultivation method, don't slack off, martial artists are just the beginning. Yes, instructor, I will continue to work hard to cultivate. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. College Entrance Examination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. College Entrance Examination June 7, 2054. Today is the day of the college entrance examination in Shandong province. Zhang Yang also came to the exam room alone, although he had already awakened his mental and intellectual abilities. But in order not to let his years of hard work go to waste and to make his life on Earth more complete, he still decided to take the exam. Perhaps he came a bit late, and now there is a whole circle of parents around the school gate. The college entrance examination is still very useful for those who lack martial arts talent. Although the social structure has added the privileged class of warriors, there hasn't been much change in other aspects, it's just that everything now revolves around warriors. After all, warriors are the main force guarding the city, they are the heroes of humanity. Make it public. A girl in the crowd suddenly walked out and shouted. Upon hearing a girl's call, Zhang Yang turned around and saw a more traditional girl with a ponytail, canvas shoes, a dress, and a beautiful face that made her look very energetic. Su Peipei, I didn't expect you to come so late besides me. Su Peipei glanced at him and said, I'm not afraid of stage fright. I'm being steady, and the earlier I come, the more anxious I become. It's you, I didn't expect you to come and take the college entrance examination, but you haven't been to school for more than 10 days. Zhang Yang smiled and said, everyone has their own aspirations. I came to take the exam to avoid any regrets in life. Perhaps in a few years, this experience will become a valuable experience. Let's go. Let's go in together. As a college bully, of course you won't panic. In fact, I have an inexplicable sense of nervousness about exams, which may be the shadow left by the past. The two chatted for a while on the short journey and soon parted ways. Zhang Yang also came to his examination room and took out the admission ticket and his ID card that he had obtained half a month ago. Looking at the test paper in his hand, he felt an inexplicable sense of relief. 3 days quickly passed, and Zhang Yang also walked out of the exam room, but unexpectedly met a familiar person when he went out. Hello, Teacher Wang. Wang Yi looked at the student in front of him with a somewhat complicated expression. This may be the student he had skipped classes the most since teaching, but he happened to be the student he didn't want to dismiss yet. He didn't expect to be able to see him in this final moment. How did you feel about the exam? Zhang Yang gently tilted his head and muttered, I feel much easier than before. Wang Yi's eyelids twitched and he said, how are the martial artists practicing? Zhang Yang confidently said, I will participate in the assessment of quasi-warriors in mid-month. Wang Yi said with some nostalgia, you have always been very hard-working. In the first year of junior high school, you had not yet joined the martial arts school, and at that time, you studied very hard. Hey, without further ado, the teacher wishes you all the best in becoming a powerful warrior. Zhang Yang smiled and said, "Thank you, teacher." Zhang Yang walked down the stairs, feeling a little sigh in his heart. Perhaps this was the last time he had seen his teacher, right? People are destined to be separated. He should actually thank his teacher well. After all, he didn't cause any trouble for himself. He is very tolerant of his skipping classes, but also very concerned. Stepping out of the teaching building, Zhang Yang exclaimed somewhat surprised, "Su Peipei, who are you waiting for?" Su Peipei smiled lightly and said, "I'm waiting for you." Zhang Yang's pupils tightened for a moment and he smiled lightly, "Okay, let's go back together. Anyway, it's on the way." The two of them walked silently for a while, and Su Peipei asked softly, "You shouldn't be continuing your studies, right?" Zhang Yang nodded and said with a serious expression, "Actually, I really enjoy going to school, but I shouldn't have many opportunities anymore. In the middle of the month, I will participate in the quasi-martial arts assessment." Su Peipei looked at Zhang Yang in surprise, with a hint of desolation in his eyes. He happily said, "Have you reached the standard of a quasi-warrior? You have been so excellent since childhood." With a gentle smile, as a reborn person, there is nothing to compare with a group of children. Su Peipei understood everything from his expression and whispered, "If you become a warrior, where are you going?" Zhang Yang lowered his head for a moment and whispered, "To become a martial artist, I should be practicing in Jiji City, Shandong for 1 or 2 years, and then I will experience it in the nearby wilderness area." At this time, the wilderness is not something that a small warrior can traverse. Su Peipei's expression relaxed a lot and he said happily, "If you go to the wilderness in the future, you should tell me. I have never been out yet." "Okay," he said calmly and confidently. Su Peipei's mood has become very good. "I will be studying at Shandong's 2nd Military Academy in the future. If you have time in the future, you can come and play with me." Zhang Yang said with uncertainty, "I don't know what will happen in the future. Let's see and see." The chat time passed quickly, and at a fork in the tube building, the two parted ways. Zhang Yang lowered his head, feeling a bit heavy in his heart. He could feel Su Peipei's favor towards him, from childhood to adulthood. Unfortunately, he is not a good match after all. In a few years at most, he will go to the universe, and then he may go for hundreds of years. Finally, there is endless time, and it may take hundreds of years to reply to a message in the future. This is a relatively good situation. If the situation is not good, he can only slowly advance to higher education. From the Qian Wu Dao Chang, then to the Qian Wu Secret Realm, and finally to the Virtual Universe Company, this time is also longer and slower. However, there is also a similarity, which is that time may be infinitely stretched in the future. People who like him are destined to be lonely due to system issues. He dare not practice anything about clones in the future. It's better to let a love of only one person end before it even blooms. It's important to spend more time with family now, but we don't know how long it will take to see each other again in the future. As soon as she got home, Luo Feng walked over and casually asked, Yang, how did you do on the exam?" After this exam, Zhang Yang has relaxed a lot. The bad habits he left behind in the past, such as pre-exam anxiety, and he has been carrying them all along since traveling through time, but now he can let go of them. "Are you okay? It's a test from before. Are you still used to being at home with your dad? Yang, do you think I can't stay idle? Why do I feel a bit flustered while staying at home? I didn't have this problem when I was off work before," Luo Feng said with a somewhat embarrassed expression. "Mom, maybe it's because I haven't passed the assessment yet, so you're not feeling at ease," she comforted and said, "Don't worry. When brother comes back later, I will go to the martial arts school with him. This strength is not knowledge. What kind of strength should there be? It won't be low." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Assessment of Candidates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Assessment of Candidates. June 15th. Zhang Yang arrived at Shanquan Community early that day. This is the villa area of warriors, and the Club of Extreme Martial Arts is also located in the center of the community. The Extreme Guild Hall here is the main hall of Liqing District, and today's assessment of quasi-warriors is conducted here. Idle people stop. A security guard reached out to block Zhang Yang in front. Zhang Yang took out his ID card and assessment documents and smiled, saying, "Hello, I'm here to participate in today's quasi-warrior assessment." The security personnel looked at their ID card and chuckled, "Oh, I turned out to be a genius. You came to participate in the quasi-warrior assessment at the age of 18, and you are the second one I have seen this year. Alright, you go in. After your assessment is over, maybe you will still live here." Zhang Yang withdrew his identification and chuckled, "Thank you, I'll borrow your auspicious words." Entering the guild hall, I didn't expect my instructor Wu Jun to be waiting inside, arriving earlier than him. "Hello, instructor." Wu Jun chuckled and said, "I didn't expect you to come so early. Didn't we agree on 8 o'clock? Zhang Yang said with some embarrassment, "My family has been feeling a bit uneasy these past few days. I want to finish the exam early, so I came earlier." Ha ha ha. Wu Jun laughed heartily and said, "You are the hope of the whole family now. If you become a warrior, you can directly change the living environment of the family. Similarly, they will also worry about your safety. These are all normal. With your current strength, there will definitely be no problem. But the order of assessment is not the final say. It depends on how we rank it, Chief Instructor Yu Heng." Zhang Yang nodded, knowing that both his mother and brother had been feeling a bit idle lately at home. Dad feels like he's living quite well. If he's free to peek into the water of the group and enjoy reading novels. He was actually kicked out of the house by his own mother today. He had originally wanted to come a little later, but since he was kicked out, he decided to come straight over and there was nothing to stroll around outside. An hour later, there were already 20 or 30 more people around, mostly one coach leading a student. Without making everyone wait for a long time, a man with a stiff face and wearing a Zhongshan suit walked out. His face was similar to that of Wu Jun, but his eyes were full of vicissitudes. "Everyone is here, and today's quasi-martial arts assessment officially begins," he said as soon as he finished speaking. A middle-aged man with a flat head walked out. He must be the examiner for this assessment. He looked around and saw what was being said loudly. The first fist strength test, where the person who recites their name comes forward to start the test. Each person has 2 opportunities. Now, the first one, Yanggu. A young man in his 20s walked out, took a few deep breaths in front of the punching machine, and then placed his fist on his back to accumulate energy. His whole body arched like a shrimp. "Drink." He adjusted his state and suddenly let out a loud shout, then swung a fierce punch and hit the target. The previous examiner looked at the punching test machine and loudly announced, "Yanggu, punching 932 kilograms, passed." Next up, Wang Tao. A man with a relatively strong physique walked out. Wang Tao, his fist strength is 890 kilograms, not up to standard. Next, make it public. Zhang Yang heard the shout and stood up, while the instructor next to him, Wu Jun, also prepared to cheer him on. His strength has now surpassed that of a quasi-warrior by a lot. He came here mainly to obtain the cultivation method of genetic energy, so that he can progress more quickly. With a serious expression, he approached the punching target of the punching test machine and was ready to give it his all. If possible, he also wanted to show off in front of the chief instructor. As long as the chief instructor leaves an impression on him and he performs well in the future, the chief instructor may recommend him to the higher-ups. Move up. That would be the 4 giants of the extreme martial arts school in Shandong province. As long as you can leave your name and make these big shots take you a little more seriously, you are likely to see them later. I have also seriously considered putting in effort and promoting myself. However, those moves and so on all require cultivation techniques or certain attributes of power, and those that are too light and heavy are also not important, but if it's just a simple leverage, he can still do it. He quietly closed his eyes, recalling the scenes of his previous efforts. At that time, the invention of this method was thanks to his brainpower. What would happen if power were not circulating outside the body, but inside the body? A few days ago, he made an unconscious attempt and never expected to actually achieve it. Zhang Yang poses with a slight lunge, transmitting strength from the ground to the soles of the feet, and then from the soles to the calves, waist, and shoulders. Then it flows back in the opposite direction, and when the power is transmitted to the soles of the feet again, the body simultaneously exerts force, so that when it flows out again, it becomes two parts of the force. He can now achieve a perfect cycle of strength. No matter how high his strength is, he cannot control it and may even harm his body, but he doesn't know how much strength he can increase. Wu Jun in the audience is a bit unclear when he sees this. He is a bit confused about what Zhang Yang is doing. Isn't his current strength just to go up and play around casually? I don't know if it's possible to weigh 900 kilograms in the current situation, but Zhang Yang has always been a very calm person. How could he have made a mistake in today's situation? Zhang Yang's current posture is slightly different from his usual power posture. Although it may seem unfavorable on the surface, he has actually been accumulating energy for a long time. He slowly opened his eyes, and now there was only one spot left on the punch target in front of him, which was the target he wanted to hit. With the third transmission of force from the heel all the way to the waist and finally to the arm, he had lost some control. Drink. Drop. Drop. Drip. At this point, the punch strength testing machine displays 0.1530 kg. The examiner looked at the numerical values on the fist strength testing machine in a daze and turned around to take a look at General Instructor Wu Jun. Wu Jun nodded lightly, indicating that there was no problem with the test, and then took a deep look at Zhang Yang. The examiner exclaimed in a trembling voice, "Zhang Yang, fist strength 0.1530 kg, passed the assessment." Wu Jun's face became less calm, and he said with some concern, "Xiao Yang, what the hell are you doing? Didn't you have just over 1,000 kilograms of power before? How did it turn into 1,500 kilograms during the test?" Zhang Yang smiled and said, "Anyway, can I pass the level the second time? I suddenly realized this move was a bit interesting last night. When I was on stage just now, I couldn't help but experiment and didn't expect the effect to be quite good." Wu Jun whispered to Zhang Yang, "Don't do this next time. The chief instructor is a serious person." Nodding loudly indicates understanding. Today, he also had a sudden idea. Although he seemed to be deliberately showing off, he believed it would not have any negative impact on his future. There are rewards for recommending geniuses. He has no grudges with the chief instructor, so there's no need to argue with money. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Absorbing Cosmic Energy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Absorbing Cosmic Energy. Zhang Yang, who can create his own powerful moves, is definitely a genius. He will only show his talent for cultivation in the future. Even if the chief instructor does not accept him, he can still talk to the Thunderbolt Martial Arts School. However, Zhang Yang's performance today is already good enough, and he conducted the following test safely. Time passed quickly, and in the remaining 2 speed and mental response tests, Zhang Yang achieved a score of 30.1 meters per second, an excellent neurological response. Although he did not practice his body method, he is still a spiritual and mental master, and his body is very coordinated. His neural reaction speed is definitely excellent. He hasn't practiced much before because it's not worth it. He doesn't have the mental and equipment support, and doesn't have many combat conditions, let alone body method secrets. His body method cultivation is very slow, and he is proficient in basic body methods. The issue of spiritual awakening before becoming a warrior has been troubling him. All he can do is bear it, he cannot escape it, and improving physical fitness is the key. I have tried with people twice before, both of which were basic body techniques. If I couldn't dodge them, I would fight with my sword or fist. His identity as a quasi-warrior has already begun to be entered into the system, and it is expected that his identity will change in a few days. Zhang Yang's most valued gene original energy cultivation method has also been mastered, and he couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "It's fast, it's fast." His talent, which he had accumulated for 18 years, soon reached the time to shine. He just didn't know what his physical talent would be like, but the solid ball with spiritual awareness should have a significant increase in strength. As he walked out of the Shanquan community, he thought of telling his family first. They should all be waiting for the result. "Hello, Mom, I passed the quasi-martial arts assessment." "Really? I knew my son was the best. When will you be back?" "I will go back soon. I won't go to the martial arts school today. I have obtained a new cultivation method and want to give it a try." "Okay, then hurry up and go home. Your dad and I will go out and buy some groceries. Let's celebrate." When I heard that my parents were going out, my heart couldn't help but jump. This is not the time for these poor people to wander around. "Mom, Dad, please be careful when you go out," I said. Wang Feng's impatient voice came from her phone. "What's wrong with you, child? What can happen if you go shopping and buy groceries? Hang up, hang up. Do. Zhang Yang couldn't help but smile bitterly when he heard the busy call. Perhaps he was too cautious. However, the wealth gap in today's society is too large, and there are privileged classes above it. As long as they are wealthy, they will inevitably have connections with the government or the military. His identity has not changed yet. If anything unexpected happens, he will definitely be at a disadvantage. The safety of his family is the most important, and no matter how careful, it is not an exaggeration. Only when he signs a closer contract with the extreme martial arts school and his family moves to the martial arts community, is he truly safe, and he can also relax and focus on his cultivation. Late at night. At this moment, everything around us became very quiet, and after today's celebration, the whole family also relaxed. And he will also take the first step towards becoming a genetic warrior. Ha, 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 the familiar sound of shouting rang out. Zhang Yang doesn't care, he has become accustomed to it. No matter how many problems he has, he will adapt to the difficult life here for a period of time. Suppressing external interference, he boldly displayed the 5 hearts towards heaven cultivation method. He had already memorized every aspect of this action during the day, and the method of cultivation was already clear in his mind. It is said to have the 5 hearts facing the sky, but it is actually a posture similar to meditation. However, due to the flexibility of practicing martial arts from a young age, after sitting cross-legged, the feet can face upwards. Both hands should be facing upwards, spread flat above the legs, with the waist naturally straight and the spine swaying upwards like a dragon. This can put the entire body into a state that seems neither tight nor loose. Slowly let go of your mind and let go of external distractions, gradually clearing your mind and allowing you to feel the changes in the world more clearly. Now there are methods for cultivation, and his body has also reached the standard. The door to cosmic energy should also be open for him. Everything around him became very sensitive, and even he could clearly feel the airflow generated by his breathing. For him, the process of subduing the heart ape was still very difficult. He is usually silent because he knows more than others. He has been like this since he was young, and at that time he couldn't play with his peers. But his inner thoughts have never been lacking, and his inner world is rich, which has become an obstacle for him now. This is the most difficult part of perceiving cosmic energy. He knows that he needs to enter a state of no thought, and no desire before his body cells can autonomously produce actions to absorb cosmic energy. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. 40 minutes. 2 hours. The night is getting deeper. Zhang Yang doesn't make any movements, nor does he feel anxious. He is constantly restraining his thoughts and not letting them affect his body's instincts. The mind has calmed down, and the distractions have also disappeared. At this moment, Zhang Yang seems to have fallen asleep. He has given up control of his body and mind, but his body still maintains a posture of 5 hearts facing the sky. In a mysterious perspective, cosmic energy begins to emerge, never rejecting anyone. At this moment, it is constantly pouring into its expansive body. Zhang Yang unconsciously let out a soft snort, but he no longer knew. By the time he restrained his mind, he was already almost asleep. The cells unconsciously began to compete for the incoming energy. They had been hungry for 18 years, during which time they had never absorbed any cosmic energy except for some food intake. When the energy of the universe is unconsciously absorbed, his body is constantly strengthening, and his spiritual consciousness begins to change. The originally colored solid sphere slowly begins to rotate, and each rotation produces a faint mist. As the energy in the universe also enters the sea of spiritual consciousness, the changes here become even more intense, the mist is churning, and the entire sea of consciousness begins to tremble. The spiritual power and cosmic energy with a hint of color constantly merge, and then these colorful spots begin to shine. Red turns fiery red, blue turns deep blue, gray turns bright silver. 1, 2, 10. Countless colorful dots of light form a magnificent river, illuminating the entire sea of spiritual consciousness. End of this chapter.